Good afternoon. My name is Edgar. I am the director of Latin American and Caribbean chapter of the Smart Car Alliance. Bienvenidos a todos. Soy Edgar, el director de América Latina y el Caribe para Smart Car Alliance. Today we're going to be talking about our interoperability specification. Before we start, could we get a list of names of people who are on the call and organizations you represent?
Bob Merkert, Advanced COT Systems.
Alfredo Acosta, Entrust Data Card.
Ivo from Banrisul, Brasil.
Banquero from NXP.
Global Electronics. Global Enterprise Technologies.
Fernando Mendez, Visa.
This is John Payne with Interseed.
Gurpreet names with SCALA/Secure.
Anybody else? Okay. So the purpose of this call was to clarify and help our members from the SCALA organization understand our interoperability specification, which was discussed and mandated by our board of directors of SCALA in one of our board meetings approximately a year and a half ago. And for this sense, we wanted to provide an opportunity for our members to be able to understand fully, both technically and understanding why we're doing this global interoperable specification for identity systems. I would like to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is going to be Fernando Mendez, our representative of Visa and chairman of SCALA. I would ask that all questions be left to the end of the presentations. And then we'll have Gurpreet Manes, which is acting as our technical advisor for this project, who will be talking about the GenueID. With this, Fernando, I leave the presentation up to you.
Perfect, thank you, Edgar. Can you help me with the slides on the screen? I'm having problems with my laptop, so you can help me just to be controlling the slides.
Will do. I also ask that everybody who's not speaking, please put your microphones in mute.
Okay, very good. And well, I have prepared this segment in Spanish, but I think I'm going to switch to English, so everybody's on the same page. Edgar, do we have the presentation on the screen already?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with the slide 2. For this segment, we would like to have a brief overview of EMVCo. And once again, if you could verify that your phone is on mute. There you go, thank you. Okay, and we're going to start talking a little bit about EMVCo, because basically what we are trying to do with the identification specification is very similar to the model that we have today on payments, on the payments space with EMV. So we are going to start with a brief overview on how that organization works and what is doing for the payments space. So Edgar, if we can move to slide 3. Basically, EMVCo is a global organization that is owned by American Express, Discover, JCB, MasterCard, UnionPay, and Visa. And this organization, the main objective that it has is to facilitate the worldwide adoption and interoperability of smart cards for payments. As part of the responsibilities that are currently on EMVCo is the maintenance, the creation, maintenance of the specification itself, and also the related testing processes. I would say that adoption of EMV as a unified process has been very helpful to promote a unified international payment framework. Basically, since 1996, when the first version of the EMV specification was created, all different industry players in the payment space have been contributing to the specification, and this specification has been evolving and adapting to the needs of the market in terms of increasing security, in terms of guaranteeing the global interoperability, which was one of the main objectives of this specification. And also it has created the infrastructure that is required to continue evolving and supporting new emerging technologies. So chip as the foundation for payments, migrating from the typical or the traditional magnetic stripe to EMV card, and from EMV now we have the platform and infrastructure to continue evolving and moving into new technologies like contactless payments, mobile, etc., mobile payments, etc. So again, we are talking about this because the principle is very similar to what we want to do with the identification specification. Create a global standard where all the industry, all the participants in the identification industry can provide feedback and contribute and enrich the specification. And once it is adopted, basically we can expand and generalize the use of this solution. Edgar, if we can move to slide number 4. As an organization, the scope of the organization has been evolving, and from a single case that was the creation and the maintenance of the EMV contact chip specification, new functionalities or new needs have arisen, and now EMV is responsible for multiple other capabilities or other responsibilities, going from the testing of the devices where the chip must be accepted, the acquiring of the acceptance part, the management of the interoperability cases to ensure that everything is working as it is supposed to work, the creation of a specific specifications, let's say, for domestic cases, the evaluation of the security of the chips, the evaluation of the security of the cards, and the evolution to contactless payments, moving from contact chip to contactless and mobile. And this has continued to morph, adding new responsibilities like tokenization, which is basically the platform for new payments, and 3D Secure, which is the specification for e-commerce or online commerce authentication, and always under the principle or based on the main principle that everything must be globally accepted, interoperable, and with all the security that is required for payments. Edgar, if we can move to slide number 5. So once again, for those of you that are not familiar with EMV, this organization was born by the payment brands as a company owned by EuroPay at the time. MasterCard and Visa were the founders. and then later JCB joined the organization, a little bit later American Express, and at that point the organization opens its doors to all industry players, and today there are a number of industry players, chip manufacturers, POS device vendor providers, security solutions, multiple industry players are participating in EMV. And basically, all the industry is helping to shape the future of payments, meaning there are working groups that are creating the new generation of specifications, working groups that are thinking in what's the next thing that we need to focus in terms of evolving and creating new things to evolve payments. And after this wave of new players coming into the picture, more recently, China UnionPay and Discover also joined the organization. So basically, the scope and the reach that EMVCo has today is incredible. Basically, everybody on the payments space is participating one way or another in EMV. Edgar, if we can go to slide number 6. And something that is important to understand from once again from a payments perspective is that there are roles and responsibilities on the different parts of the value chain. There are very clear responsibilities for EMV. For instance, the managing and the evolution of the specifications, performing the testing and the certification of the devices where the cards are accepted, or the chips and the cards itself, to continue thinking and defining specifications to enhance the security, and also to continue thinking in how to incorporate new payment technologies. However, all the other industry players that participate also have a role in terms of how this is implemented. And from a global, regional, and domestic perspective, the different payment systems, payment organizations in different countries, they are responsible for product development. The payment brands are responsible for specific mandates. In some cases, governments are regulating this. Commercial incentives where they make sense, and even the considerations about how the fraud, if it happens, is going to impact and who's going to be responsible for that. So there is a clear definition of functions and roles, and once again, the objective is of reviewing this is to think in how this can be extrapolated to the identification industry, how we can take the learnings of this experience that we had with EMV, and how we could replicate this and to make a global specification happen in terms of ID. Edgar, we can move to slide number 7. In thinking about payments, there are 3 clear players or 3 clear layers of responsibility. The first, the foundation for the specs and the tools that are required. Then the payment system and the payment brands, defining the policies, the guidelines, and the infrastructure itself. And then the issuer banks and the acquirers, then the entities responsible for the relation with the merchants, that are really making or bringing these solutions to and becoming a reality in the market. So once again, how this would extrapolate to ID to the ID world is something that we need to think. If we can move to slide number 9. This slide is basically the example or the corroboration of the success of this approach. today, these are numbers at the end of 2014. At the latest, these are the latest official numbers, and this number is much bigger today. But basically, there are 3.4 billion EMV cars in the market today. That's 3,400,000 million cars issued in the different countries around the world. So this is an example of how a global specification can really have an impact, and how all those different players, all those industry players that participate in the effort, have one way or another obtain a benefit or the satisfaction to see this bring to a reality. Just in Latin America, we have today around 471 million EMV cars at the end of 2013, and close to 600 million cars at the beginning of 2015. Edgar, if we can move to slide number 11. This slide talks a little bit about how the organization works, and what are the different levels of forums and players, and how the industry is engaging in terms of evolving and developing these specifications. And in terms of the programs that are handled directly by EMVCo, we have the Associates program, which basically have two levels, the Business Associates and Technical Associates. These are different types of memberships. And again, extrapolating this to what we have in the Merkert Alliance, basically different levels of membership and different levels of influence and different levels of participation in the different forums. All these associates can participate in the different meetings, and there are activities related to the evolution of those specifications. EMV is also participating in multiple forums with speaking engagement, panels, seminars, webinars. Once again, extrapolating this to Merkert Alliance, webinars like the one we are doing today. And there is also a significant effort at the EMVCo level in sharing information via website, via LinkedIn, via press releases, specifications, and white papers. Once again, very similar to the efforts and the activities that are done in Merkert Alliance. So, if we go to slide number 12. Yes, very close to the end of this brief introduction. EMVCo is also engaging with multiple global organizations. EMV has a close relationship and is very active in global platform, in PCI for the data security, NFC Forum for mobiles and contactless payments, and GSMA in everything related to mobile applications. All of this always with the foundation of the ISO standard, which is the starting point in all the conversation related to EMV and related to chip cards and chip technology. As I was saying before, the objective of talking about EMV in this brief introduction is basically to ask you how Merkert Alliance can help to create something similar in the ID space. Today, we don't think we have something similar, and the effort that we started 1.5 years ago with that decision that was taken in the board of directors meeting in SCALA was exactly that. Try to define a framework of a specification that could be the initial or the starting point for a global standard that, if adopted, basically could replicate the success that EMV has had in the payment space. So that was what I had prepared for today. Again, it was just a brief introduction about the organization and how we are taking this model and this concept and trying to think how these learnings can be very helpful to promote and evolve a global specification for ID. And with that, just thank you for your time. And I don't know if you have any questions. Edgar, get back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Fernando. I think it's very clear for us how an interoperable specification such as EMV actually provided the role for chip cards to become massively accepted in the payment space. With that, now I would like to provide the presentation, to provide the stage over for Group Manes, which is being our technical advisor, and will be providing what we have done as the interoperable specification for the identity space. Sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone. Edgar, you're going to have to give me a presenter so I can present. Thank you. So I think we have a few slides to cover. If, you know, at the end, we'll keep a session for questions. If somebody has a challenge where you don't see a slide, then maybe somebody can speak up, or maybe Edgar, you can tell me. So a little bit, I guess, the background on GenueID. You know, the primary, you know, the things that we'll cover in this presentation is the major parts of the agenda introduction, the government challenges that are in a interoperable ID or a multi-application ID, why, you know, GenueID, what is the purpose around the white paper that was provided as is a guidance mechanism, the purpose of the applet, along with applet, there are test tools, user guides for integration for card manufacturers, for CMS providers, for middleware providers, you know, what type of security and standards that were utilized, kind of just a high level of, you know, that's all the components that are involved from a hardware aspect, as well as, you know, at the end we'll just summarize sort of the benefits of GenueID. That's primarily the agenda focus for this presentation. So the major purpose that you know, SCALA wanted to go after creating a specification for interoperable ID was the focus was a national identity credential. Focus was on trying to create a baseline where you know, when customers purchase a product that they're following a certain specification, but they're also interoperable, where they can utilize that credential for actual use cases, whether it's for e-government services, for border crossing, or even allowing the government-issued, federally issued credential to be utilized by third parties as well as enterprises to as a root of trust for the identity of the person. So we also in the white paper primarily we talk about the guidance for you know, secure enrollment, verification, personalization, issuance, lifecycle management. So it's providing a education to the you know, customer space, which a lot of times we as industry vendors we face this a lot, right? That how do we give a core sort of education where the customer actually understands that there are a lot of moving parts in the trusted ecosystem of the identity, especially at a national level, and they are given you know, enough information where they know to ask the right questions, come up with the right requirements, and so that kind of makes our life easier and the deployment cycle and less, or sales cycle less. So we focus on GenueID credentials being multi-application tenancy, meaning that terminate at the security at the upper level, so you could have additional applets on the same credential, such as EMV payments or another, driving license or health or other applications that you would want. So primarily, as far as the applet, the tools are particularly more for personalization as well as the conformance testing tool. So we looked at various standards in the market, like PEV, ICO, other standards for FIPS and things like that, ISO standards. And what we try to do is sort of, in essence, take things that we thought are a good value, but put in a actual applet which everybody has access to be able to consume and support. And so this notion of, well, my middleware would work with this product, but it doesn't because I don't have access to this applet, or I don't have access to those cards. And so kind of that is the essence of trying to make a sort of a more of an open, interoperable platform for the vendors in the space as well as customers. So typically we know what government challenges normally are, right? We are all from the industry, so you look at that, okay, I need to issue a secure identity, I need to be able to authenticate, whether it's from a visual perspective, electronic perspective, online. Then I need to be able to authorize and provide access. Again, you could take physical access, or you could logical access and online government services. So we're not just talking about just one type of access. And the whole purpose is around safeguarding its citizens, but still making them a very much their core focus, that every citizen counts, and being able to provide them a service. So identity is very important from an actual base of e-government services. Providing e-government service such as whether it's for health, benefits, welfare, tax, other services the government may provide in different countries. And the other is maintaining an ecosystem of trust. So you can, no matter who is trying to authenticate the person, you can ensure that it is a person is who they say they are, and you can be very certain about that, and do it electronically and do it fast. And keep it user-centric. So, for example, that there may be, different extensions, attributes, or containers needed for additional features, and so we kept it flexible enough that we can tune this GenueID into the user-centric for various governments that may have additional feature requirements. So primary high-level features of this is that, again, it works on a contact or contactless or both card. It is focused around trying to be non-proprietary, and major reason non-proprietary is that everybody has access to the white paper, the specification, the user guide, the applet itself. So it's not like the PIV standard where, okay, there is a specification, but everybody writes their own applet, and then everybody has their own some proprietary calls, and then it becomes very difficult to support. For example, a CMS vendor might want to support a particular card, but they don't have access to the cards. So trying to sort of remove some of these contingencies. So again, multi-applet loading is possible, so you could do GenueID along with other applets from the vendors. There's so many vendors that provide other applets. the containers are very flexible, so you can add additional containers depending on the use cases. It is based on PKI. That is a recommendation. So you have a content signing certificate, you have digital signature certificate for authentication and signing. You have from a compliance standpoint, whether you're using a Java card, Global Platform 2.2 or 3.0, this applet will conform to and work on that. Then from a graphical personalization, we recommended security features, things like that. But again, that depends on from a customer to customer what security features they would want. It's a multi-modal biometrics board, but again, facial, fingerprint, but then again, those are recommended. Those are not a requirement, because from a cost aspect, different projects in the ID space may not use go for certain biometric levels just because of a cost structure. So we wanted to kind of go for something that can be deployed quickly at a lower cost aspect, but also give features where they can actually increase from a security level depending on the requirement. So as I mentioned, it's typically when you look at any identity system, and applet and card are a core component, but they're not everything. So then you look at a Java card, then the applet, you can also port the applet over to secure elements, depending on, if you have access. At the end of the day, it's not the challenge is not the applet or how do you port over. The challenge is, do you have access to the keys on that secure element? And so depending on what is available for the customer, and what they have access to the security keys, then you can load the applet and secure elements as well. Drivers typically, when you look at a smart card, you're talking about, CCID, or because of contactless, you can use this on the mobile devices using NFC or Bluetooth reader. So there are multiple interface layers to it. From a driver middleware standpoint, you have various companies out there that do middleware, and that is PKCS 11 or 15 or CAPI based, as well as just the API that you may need for your application to integrate. So that's provided. Then you have a third-party applications, like I mentioned, in addition to GenueID on the same credential. So we're starting to see so much of the multi-application, multi-use cases for ID, and which is a good thing for our business. But primarily, these are kind of the core markets and where various places. Okay, I think somebody needs to go on mute because I can hear myself. Okay. So one of the major part of this GenueID project was this white paper, right? So this white paper talks about, as I mentioned, not only high level about the applet. It talks about the need for secure credentials and especially multi-application credentials. It talks about the, as I mentioned, the enrollment, verification, personalization aspect. And again, it is a generalized, so no matter who the vendor might be from the industry providing the various systems for this, can at the end of the day, the white paper is to keep neutral, just to educate the customer base. So you have a typical discussion on a CMS, so credential management system, different on secure authentication for login or verification. Then we mentioned in the white paper the actual GenueID credential, physical specifications, graphical, electrical, what's mandatory, what's optional. Then mentioning about the architecture of the applet, as well as its objects and authentication services, digital signature content signing, as I mentioned, certificate authority as a trusted CA is another topic that's mentioned in the white paper. Some high-level discussion on hardware and software technologies, middleware integration, that the need for that. There is a concept mentioning of mobile ID wearable and derived credentials, but again, that's just an introduction concept. The focus is still a national ID. Multi-application use case, there is a recommendation and given introduction to customers in the white paper. So in the applet itself, as I mentioned earlier, it can work contactless card. It can work in sizes from 32K to 145K, depending on why the space is needed, certain containers or certain features that the particular customer may need. There is obviously data, biometrics, PTI on this. The other part to it is that, recommendation of that you have to run on a FIPS-approved module, which, conforms to global platform 3.2 or 3.0. There is a secure messaging protocol for AES or triple DES, and the secure channel protocol is a SCPO3. And again, the use cases we talk about is identification, whether you're doing a national or a mobile authentication, and digital signature. There's also a additional storage for other containers that customers may need. And the whole objective around this was to provide not only specification, but to provide actually applet. So there is a conformance between the industry as well as the customer to be able to get the best bang out of their bucks that they're spending on a smart card technology for national ID. This is just some of the containers that are on the actual the data objects in the applet. Again, I already mentioned the security and the control. So we terminate at the applet level for authentication just because so you can load other applets to give it sort of multi-domain environment, and flexibility of the containers I mentioned already. So what's included is as a user guide is simply a reference guide and with examples for that not only a vendor from whether you're a smart card vendor, whether you're a CMS vendor, whether you're a middleware, you can actually look at all of the APDU calls and access conditions and stuff, so you can actually support this applet in your system. And or load the applet if you're a manufacturer for smart card. So that's the purpose of the user guide. The conformance tool purpose is, you can, once you parcel it, you can actually test it. It's very sort of similar to, NIST has the 85B tool for the PIV. And so similar to that concept, except here you're exporting more of the latest technology because of some of the features that this applet supports. You can also write sample data and stuff with the conformance tool to the applet as well. When you look at standards, typically, we're all familiar with the smart card standards. There's digital certificates, so look at SHA 256. There is a biometric standards for fingerprint or JPEG 2000, CBAF headers, things like that. So it's not, like I said, that it is following. It's not something completely out of the ordinary what we try to put together here. From a hardware aspect or overall, we wanted to educate the customers because it's not, a lot of times customers will buy a smart card and then they sit there for 2 years and they don't know what to do with it, or they, buy a card but they don't put anything on the chip. So there are a lot of things that we see, or they are locked in with some proprietary solution and they can't, leverage all the benefits from it. So we also try to educate on various products that are involved in the identity ecosystem. So that's typically you got the CMS, you have HSM credentials, which are the smart card or micro SD or whatever secure element you may utilize. You got the enrollment issuance stations, credential readers. You have identity, printers, laminators, encoders. There's captures equipment, fingerprint scanners. There's two types. You got the single, dual, swap segment, PKI infrastructure and servers. And so again, it is a generalized topic. It's not a more particular to some individual company or anything like that. So obviously the takeaway from this is that there are benefits for using GenueID for our industry as well as the customers, and we wanted to create a purpose around that, and so whether it's for visual or electrical authentication, and so there's also advantage for for industry, whether you're, like I said, a reader company or card manufacturer or application vendor integrator, is that this is something that everybody has an equal opportunity to have access to and utilize as I guess a SCALA member. So non-proprietary, interoperable was our goal here. We wanted to make it platform independent as much as possible, and the purpose around it is that we have the speed and efficiency of time to deploy can be faster just because everybody does have access to the GenueID applet and the documents and examples with it. So and so that's why we look at the fact that we try to create something, not only a specification, but a product along with it to help in a faster adoption and to save the whole burden on vendors and customers of trying to not only follow spec and then build the product around the spec and then support the product and then get them certified. So we try to eliminate some of the things with being able to actually provide the GenueID applet. Okay, I think I'm done, Edgar.
Thank you, Gurpreet. So now we wanted to go and talk about how we're introducing this into the market. So we've been actually talking very closely with different government institutions about their national identity projects, including both on the negative experiences plus things that they felt they needed for this to get out in a successful way. This way, we have decided to, in order to take full advantage of this new interoperability, we wanted our members, all of you, to actually gain as much access and information about this interoperability specification that the SCALA organization has developed, and be able to participate in some of the key initiatives that are being deployed or will be deployed in the region. Especially since we're going to be having an activity with key government agencies from the region in June, and we want to make sure that all our members are part of that process and have enough time to certify their products and solutions towards this GenueID. So one of the things that we decided to do was that a lot of the member organizations and both government agencies have always asked us for a list of vetted companies that are supposed to be considered responsible and legitimate organizations to the industry. And for that, we also developed a requirement for this specification for member organizations. It means that we, in the process of people applying for membership, we actually do a little bit of a vetting process where our committee actually accepts the organization as part of the industry, which also requires them in a way to continue the values that we have as an organization and wanting to promote the use, understanding, and widespread adoption of integrated circuit cards and related devices. We also make this process, we require a non-disclosure agreement in order to protect the privileged information that will be shared between the SCALA organization and obviously our member organizations that want to have access to this, as well as a licensing agreement. And this licensing agreement has a price tag that includes the unique file, the GenueID white paper, the user guide, and everything that actually Group P just presented. One of the things we want to do in order to make sure that this actually becomes not only a reality of only a few governments, but most of the governments in the region, we wanted to make sure that the price tags that we put for these things are as accessible as possible. That said, when we reviewed the price tags with all our, or with the key member organizations, even though the price tags that they were accustomed to was much higher, we decided to basically go under review of those price tags to be able to understand and make it as accessible as possible for the market to really have this massive deployment of interoperable identities, both for a nation and also for the interoperability and reciprocal recognition among the countries. So the key important points that I want to make sure that everybody understands of our purpose of doing this is that we wanted to make sure that the identity systems in the region were interoperable and that we could guarantee, or let's say promote, the use of smart cards for use on identity through the interoperability. We've seen a lot of key projects that have been basically stopped their process of deployment or have stopped their process of procurement because they've ran into technical issues and even interoperable issues that actually create problems and create obviously the word of mouth to other governments that the chip is not helping in the process of facilitating the identity process. So first point is that the certification process will only be verifying the integrity of the GenueID applet and that it hasn't been tampered with. Any other applets on the cards will not be verified or tested for compliance. So we want to make sure that these are separate applets as explained before. So it provides an opportunity for all the different card manufacturers and device manufacturers and solution providers to have their separate dedicated applets for their unique, even sometimes proprietary systems for governments. And we also, to make sure to limit the liability, that the GenueID not only will be a separate applet, but will not have dependent links on dedicated to the GenueID. So the basic testing and certification process is once the license has been issued, the applet has been provided, the user guide has been given, we actually would be testing to make sure that the loading of the applet has been done correctly and that it is compliant with the specification for interoperability of the GenueID. in some cases, and we've actually been hearing about requests for our organization to do the process of loading the applet into their different products to make sure that the compliance process is much faster and guarantee that it's done correctly and to avoid multiple trials of uploading. We're also doing the testing and certification of the middleware, as well as personalization and cart management systems. So with that, I finish the presentation and I open the floor for any questions.
Edgar, will we get copies of all these slides?
Yes, we're actually going to put the recording on the members only section of the website.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Very good.
Edgar, Jose, can I send you an email with the questions that we would like to formulate on our end? Is that okay?
Yes.
We're kind of limited here with time, so I think it would be more convenient just to brainstorm and send an email later or probably later this week. Is that okay?
That sounds perfect.
So, yeah, so I think that's a good option for everybody, I guess, to send questions or comments. We would love to get feedback from the rest of the members on this, right?
And from our initiative, we want to make sure that as many of our members are able to join this initiative, as well as help us promote this in the region. We are, as most of you already know, being in contact with key government organizations that are in the process of making a deployment of their national identity credentials. And we want to make sure that all our members are able to take advantage of that opportunity and make it as accessible to you guys as possible. So any feedback on that end will also be greatly appreciated. So with that,
This is,
okay, go ahead.
Sorry, it's John from Interseed. I just wonder whether, if you're able to, say a little bit more about that now in terms of the governments that you're already speaking to, the kind of countries that we're talking about, the opportunities for those of us that make an investment and join you in the project. What kind of opportunities do you see that opening up for everybody?
Yeah, so part of the reason we do the NDA is to talk more or less about our strategy that we're doing as well with governments in trying to implement this on in the region. But I think that's a discussion that not necessarily should be part of the webinar. If you want, we can talk about it in a different scenario.
Okay, thanks.
Good. I thank you all for your time. I hope you enjoyed the webinar and it was informative to see what we've been working on very hardly for many months, and hope that you guys could join us in this initiative and make sure that we can continue promoting the industry best practices in the Americas. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.